Good evening, and thank you for joining the first virtual public information meeting for the I-95 Eastern Connecticut Planning and Environmental Linkages Study. I'm Amy Livingston, and I will be your facilitator for today's meeting. Before we get started, I want to first go through a few of the technology features that we will be using today to make sure that you're able to get the most out of this meeting. Following the presentation today, we will be opening this up for a live question and answer session. If you have any questions while the presentation is going on, please feel free to put those into the question and answer tool. You may find the Q&A tool by hovering over the presentation you see on your screen now. I'll give you a second to do that. That should bring up a black box that looks like the one found on my slide. Click the icon that shows two chat bubbles. You may type a question in there at any time, and we'll come back to those when we start that Q&A session. You'll see that we've included numbers on the slides in case you would like to reference a particular slide in your question. You may notice also that the chat box will not allow you to send messages, but only to receive them. That's so we can make sure all the questions for the Q&A session come through the Q&A tool. That way we don't miss any. However, just keep in mind we will be putting some links into the chat throughout, so you don't have to worry about writing them down so quickly or taking a screenshot. If you have any technical issues today, please email us at info@i95easternct.com or call or text us at 860-380-0190. We want to ensure this meeting experience is as inclusive as possible. Live captions are automatically provided by Zoom in this meeting. To access them, again, hover over the presentation to bring up that black toolbar. You should see an icon that says CC, which stands for closed captioning. From there, you can turn on the captions and select the language if English is not your primary language. Haga clic para ver subtítulos en vivo. Puede elegir el idioma de los subtítulos. Todos los materiales, incluyendo esta presentación, están disponibles en español en el sitio web ahora. Today is about introducing you to the I-95 Eastern Connecticut Planning and Environmental Linkages Study and having your questions answered. So to do so, let's make sure that we use respectful language. You will also note that you have been muted. We understand, though, that not everyone will be able to type or write their questions. So there will be an opportunity to raise your hand virtually or on the phone later and be able to unmute you to ask your questions at the end. As a reminder, this presentation is being recorded and will be available on the study website and YouTube as soon as possible. Please remember, we are at the very early stages of this planning project. At this point, no decisions have been made as to the improvements that will be moving forward, but we are instead looking for your help in guiding those. At the end of this presentation, we will outline the multiple ways you can have your voice heard. Connecticut DOT complies with Title VI and the Civil Rights Act. No person shall, on the basis of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from participation or subject to discrimination in the development of this study. In the chat box, we're putting the links to these two important documents: a flyer with information regarding how Connecticut DOT is complying with the Civil Rights Acts, and a link to an optional feedback and demographic survey. We ask that you please let us know about your experience with us here today in this survey so we can make the next meeting even better. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to our project manager, Gary Soika, to begin our formal presentation.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Gary Soika. I am the project manager for the DOT team. Welcome to the first public information meeting for the I-95 Eastern Connecticut Planning and Environmental Linkages Study. I know that's a mouthful, so for tonight, we're just going to refer to it as the PEL. One of the benefits, the key benefits of the PEL process, which you will hear later, is the opportunity to engage you early in the process to help us create the vision for this corridor by assisting us, helping us to assist developing the purpose and need for any future projects. During the formal comment period, which is running from November 1st to November 30th, we are looking to better understand your day-to-day comments when driving the corridor. Please note that at any time during the course of the study, you will be able to make comments via the web page or social media. Next slide, please. During today's meeting, we will start by playing a video to introduce this PEL study, discuss current conditions of the corridor, and explain the draft purpose and need and how you can make a comment. From there, we will move on to the live question and answer session. As Amy mentioned, if you have a question at any time throughout the presentation, please feel free to go ahead and enter it into the chat. Questions will be answered aloud during the Q&A session. I am pleased to be joined by the full DOT team today. Myself, Shraddha Josie, Craig Babowitz, Kevin Fleming, Dave Elder, Marissa Faffinger. Also with us today are our consultant team from CDM Smith, Krista Gooden, Becca Hall, Paul Smith, Scott Harley, Gio Casentino, sorry about that, and Amy Livingston. Also in attendance are some other folks from DOT that will help assist us answering questions in the Q&A session. So thank you. And now we're going to turn it over to the presentation video. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy and Gary. The Connecticut Department of Transportation is performing a Planning and Environmental Linkages, or PEL study, to identify transportation improvements along I-95 from Branford at exit 53 to the Rhode Island state line. I'm Krista Gooden, and I'm serving as the project manager for our CDM Smith team. Joining me today is Becca Hall, my deputy project manager, and Amy Livingston, my public outreach lead. The map on the screen shows the study area, which is approximately 59 miles long. Within the study area, there are 45 interchanges and 2 major bridges, the Baldwin Bridge and the Gold Star Memorial Bridge. Additionally, the corridor passes through 3 metropolitan transportation planning regions, 3 counties and 13 towns. Let's start with a little background on the I-95 Eastern Corridor PEL study. The I-95 corridor was previously studied in 2004 and later updated in 2018. Both studies identified the need for additional capacity on I-95 to address increasing congestion. And both studies also recommended improvements, including widening in some areas and safety and design improvements at interchanges, including at the on and off ramps. Connecticut DOT initiated the PEL study in early 2022 to formalize the purpose and need, involve the Federal Highway Administration and environmental resource agencies, such as the United States Environmental Protection Agency and the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, or DEEP, to name a few. The PEL study was also initiated to solicit public input on the transportation issues and potential methods for improving the corridor, known in the transportation planning world as concepts or alternatives. Additionally, the Federal Highway Administration encouraged the use of the PEL process to help narrow down the development of potential alternatives prior to beginning the environmental clearance process. Connecticut DOT recognizes the challenges that motorists face daily along the corridor and intends to identify short-range improvements that can be implemented quickly. We will also determine long-term solutions for the next phase of the project development process as funding becomes available. Interstate 95 through Connecticut was constructed from 1941 to 1973. It originally was designed as an alternative to US Route 1 to serve both as a regional connector and for local use. This emphasis led to the development of several interchanges along the corridor that you see today. So what is the Planning and Environmental Linkages, or PEL study? Let's talk about the process, the benefits, and anticipated outcomes. The Planning and Environmental Linkages, or PEL process, was developed by FHWA about 10 years ago to create efficiency in transportation planning and project development. The PEL process considers the environment, the community, and economic conditions, and is intended to be a collaborative, integrated process for decision-making. This is achieved by ensuring local, state, and federal agencies, the environmental resource agencies like those who oversee environmental concerns, and the public work together early in the planning process. Now let's talk about what the benefits are to doing a PEL study. The PEL process combines planning, engineering, and National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA-like activities. It encourages early and meaningful public engagement. Our intent is to provide clear messaging on the desired goals and outcomes of the PEL study. It also promotes environmental stewardship by engaging with the federal and state environmental resource agencies early in the process and identifying any potential environmental concerns and impacts prior to the formal federal environmental review phase called NEPA. It assists with the project delivery by minimizing duplication, and finally, reduces delays in implementation by expediting some of the NEPA-related activities and decision-making early on with FHWA. For example, this process will allow us to identify some of the early actions the department can take to begin addressing your concerns in the corridor that may not require a federal environmental review. The outputs or products of the PEL process help the Connecticut DOT and decision makers with expediting the project development process by starting those NEPA-like activities, such as drafting the purpose and need, identifying the reasonable alternatives, and identifying preliminary impacts, potential permits, and mitigation requirements. We also hope to have an engaged and educated public and resource partner agencies that will continue during the NEPA phase. As part of this PEL process, we will develop an action plan that includes NEPA-ready projects, noting the potential phasing and programming recommendations. The NEPA process and preliminary design can start immediately at the conclusion of a PEL study as funding becomes available. So how do we get there? Following the initiation of the PEL study, we identify the transportation problems in the corridor using data. As part of this public meeting, we are hoping to hear from you to make sure that what the data tells us aligns with your day-to-day experiences. Next, we will develop the purpose and need with input from the public and agencies. As you will hear today, we have a draft. However, this is another place where we are looking for your feedback to make sure that proposed improvements reflect the need you see in this corridor. Next, we will develop the concepts and evaluation criteria for how each concept will be evaluated or screened to determine if it meets the purpose and need you have helped us to define. Based on that evaluation criteria, we will screen the alternatives and then identify the reasonable alternatives. At the next public meeting, we will present those reasonable alternatives that address the purpose and need for your feedback. And at the conclusion of the PEL process, we will prepare a final PEL study report and FHWA PEL questionnaire. This will include the future projects that are needed in the corridor, along with recommended phasing for implementation. So let's recap what we've done so far. As I stated before, the PEL study was initiated in early 2022. The study team has been analyzing the existing and future traffic and safety information to identify the transportation issues. We've also initiated the outreach activities and began defining the environmental conditions. Next, we will provide a summary of the demographics, traffic conditions, roadway and bridge conditions, safety analysis, and environmental resources within the study area. Providing transportation for all users is a priority for Connecticut DOT. While we go through these statistics on the next few slides, we recognize that it's important to understand not only the potential number of users of the system as demonstrated by the population numbers, but also their needs. As we age, our transportation needs are changing over time, including where we are going, how we get there, and what times we choose to go. As we look across the region that the study area resides in, we have a fairly even distribution of people from all age categories. However, we have double the number of people who are over 50 compared to any other category. We also recognize that while the corridor is by and large mostly white, we want to note the diversity in our area and make sure individuals who are of different backgrounds and cultures have a seat at the table during this planning process. We must be thoughtful and inclusive of the ideas and feedback of communities with environmental justice concerns. As you see here and on subsequent slides, not only is New Haven County our largest in terms of population, it also has greater diversity. In that same sense, we recognize that our study area also includes people whose incomes are below the poverty threshold and households that do not own a vehicle. Again, we see that New Haven County has a higher percentage of individuals below the federal poverty threshold and higher percentage of households without a vehicle compared to the state of Connecticut as a whole. Understanding today's landscape is only one piece of the puzzle. Connecticut DOT wants to make sure we are designing improvements that help fix today's problems, but also look ahead to what the challenges might be in the future. For instance, we are running all of our traffic analyses through the year 2050. That's over 25 years from now. And while no one has a crystal ball, our traffic models use the best available data to understand trends like population growth and employment growth, both drivers of traffic congestion along the I-95 corridor. As you will see, this study area is anticipated to grow faster in both categories, people and jobs, than the state as a whole, with an anticipated 18% population growth and an impressive 26% growth in jobs across the study area. Now I'd like to ask Becca Hall to share more information on traffic engineering and safety conditions.
Thank you, Krista. Now that we've talked about anticipated growth in people and employment, we probably all anticipate an increase in use of the corridor. Average annual daily traffic, or AADT, is the average daily number of vehicles using the corridor. We look at the total number of vehicles at a certain point on the highway for the entire year in both directions, and then divide that total number of days in a year, 365. This is a number we will refer to in the next slides. Looking at the beginning of the corridor in Branford in 1958, when I-95 was first operational, it carried 40,000 vehicles a day. Moving to where we are now, in 2016, it carries 105,000 vehicles with 9% trucks, which is an increase of 163%. Looking to the future, in 2045, we anticipate I-95 in Branford will carry 135,000 vehicles, which is an increase of 29%. Moving east along the corridor to the Baldwin Bridge area, we see the same initial volume of 40,000 in 1958. Today, there is 97,000 vehicles with 11% trucks, which is a slight decrease in vehicles compared to the Branford area shown on the previous slide, but a 143% increase from 1958. In 2045, we are predicting a 30% increase to 126,000 vehicles in the Baldwin Bridge area. Taking a closer look at the summer traffic volumes along I-95, we found that Fridays are the busiest travel day on the corridor, with 12% higher than average volume. With many recreational destinations like beaches, the aquarium, and marinas, we are not surprised that many people leave on Friday to start their weekend. Looking further into this, we see that Fridays in August along the corridor have a 25% higher than average volume, with people enjoying that final summer weekend. Looking at speeds in the northbound direction, heading to Rhode Island on Saturdays, the average speed is 34 miles per hour between Branford and Madison, with a posted speed limit of 65 miles per hour. This occurs on Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. In the southbound direction, on Sundays, the average speed is 32 miles per hour between Waterford and Old Lyme. This occurs from 1 p.m. to 8 p.m. This is when people are traveling home from their weekend in Mystic, Rhode Island, or the Cape. As Krista mentioned, I-95 was intended to be a local and regional route, and there are many interchanges and on and off ramps to accommodate this. 49 interchanges and 156 on or off ramps on the 59-mile corridor. 48% of these interchanges are too closely spaced, like exits 86 and 87 in Groton. There are 5 left-hand on-ramps and off-ramps, which are atypical for us as drivers and can lead to slower traffic in the left lane. Many of the shoulders along the corridor are too narrow, between 4 and 11 feet, when current standard is 12 feet. 70% of the off-ramps and 55% of the on-ramps are too short. This causes drivers to slow down on the main line. 6 bridges are in poor condition. 40 off-ramps and 33 on-ramps have curves that are too tight. And the I-95 main line also has 7 curves that are too tight with steep grades. Looking at the safety analysis. The safety analysis reviewed the Connecticut Crash Data Repository for 2018, 2019, and 2020. Over this 3-year period, there were 2,925 crashes with a relatively even split northbound and southbound. About a quarter of the crashes included an injury, and there were 19 fatalities. During the summer weekends, crashes were 67% higher than the annual average. I will now turn it over to Krista to discuss the environmental resources.
Thanks, Becca. Early in the PEL process, our project team conducted an environmental scan to identify the social, natural, and cultural resources that may exist within the study area. The purpose of this environmental review is to identify those resources early in the planning process and to identify constraints and potential fatal flaw resource areas for use in the alternative evaluation process. For cultural social resources, the team identified 19 archaeological sites, 62 historic properties, 12 cemeteries, 33 public parks, recreational areas, and wildlife waterfowl refuges, and 9 sites that were purchased with land and water conservation funds. There are also 18 communities with environmental justice concerns within the project corridor. This includes census block groups with a population majority that is minority, low income, and/or populations with limited English proficiency. For natural resources, the team identified 45 areas along the corridor that crossed floodplains and channel crossings, 18 areas that are known to have protected species, and 16 areas that are within the coastal zone. Now that we've talked about who is using the corridor, what are the conditions, and what type of transportation problems we are seeing, we develop a preliminary purpose and needs statement for public and stakeholder input. So what exactly is a purpose and needs statement? The purpose and needs statement tells us why the project or study is being conducted. It conveys the study area's vision and goals while incorporating the transportation issues and problems identified in the early data collection and analyses. The purpose and needs statement is essentially the foundation of the decision-making process of the PEL study and future National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, analysis. The purpose of improvements along the I-95 Eastern Connecticut corridor is to reduce congestion and improve travel time along Interstate 95 from exit 53 in Branford to the Rhode Island state line. The transportation needs within the corridor are organized by mobility issues and roadway deficiencies. The mobility issues we have identified so far include interchange and weaving operating conditions, congestion and overcapacity interstate facilities, unreliable travel times, and congestion-related crashes on I-95. The roadway deficiencies we have identified so far include areas of poor pavement and bridge condition, steep longitudinal grades, insufficient acceleration, deceleration ramp lengths, substandard interchange geometrics and interchange spacing, and substandard shoulder widths. Study goals are not the project needs or project purpose, but provide guidance for the concepts and alternatives development. They help tell the story of how the improvements should fit within the context of the community and reflect previous public input and engagement from the previous studies on the corridor, as well as regional planning studies. The draft goals for the I-95 Eastern Connecticut PEL study are improve capacity, improve safety, enhance mobility, improve transit connections, and accommodate future transportation technology. So here are a few next steps to keep in mind following the first virtual public information meeting. We will be finalizing the purpose and need with input from the public and resource agencies later this fall. We will be developing the concepts and screening methodology. Next spring in 2023, we will be screening the concepts and identifying the reasonable alternatives. We will then plan to hold the second virtual public information meeting next summer. Finally, we anticipate the final PEL study report for next fall 2023. Here's a quick look at what happens once we finalize the PEL study. The individual projects identified in the PEL study action plan can then progress into the NEPA phase as funding becomes available. The NEPA phase is where we confirm or refine the purpose and need, conduct the detailed environmental studies and a noise analysis, refine the alternatives, explore mitigation and commitments, and prepare the decision document. Project implementation includes the final design, right-of-way acquisition, permitting and mitigation, and construction. And finally, the maintenance of the roadway and right-of-way continues for the life of the facility. Now I would like to ask Amy Livingston to provide more information on how you can stay involved on this study.
Thank you to the team for providing that wonderful overview. I'm sure you all have a lot of thoughts, ideas, and questions coming to mind. So let's talk about how you can have your voice heard. Getting your feedback is our #1 priority. There are several ways you can provide your input. You can provide a comment on our study website. We'll put the link in the chat now for you. At this link, you can also explore all the information we've covered today at your own pace. Additionally, we have an online survey on the website. The formal comment period for this virtual meeting is open through the end of this month, so make sure to visit our website, take our survey, email us, or send a letter by November 30th, 2022. While we're open to hearing your feedback at any time, having your comment by November 30th allows us to take that feedback into consideration as we move into the next step in this process. If you haven't already, please make sure to follow us on Facebook and visit our website to sign up to get study updates. We'll also put those links in the chat for you now. And now we'll transition into the question and answer session. But before we get started, I want to go over a few reminders to make sure the session is as useful to all participants as possible. While projects can bring about a lot of emotion, please remember to keep your words and actions respectful. This will allow the team to best understand your questions so they can answer appropriately. Please remember that this session is about asking questions, not about providing a verbal comment. As we mentioned, there are many ways to provide a comment, including emailing us or filling out a comment on our website. We anticipate that many questions may be similar. So instead of you having to listen to slight variations, we'll try to answer similar questions at one time. As a reminder, this is being recorded and will be available on the study website and YouTube as soon as possible. To avoid everyone talking over one another, all participants will remain muted unless they're unable to type the question. We will begin by answering questions that are submitted through the question and answer tool. To find that, please hover over this presentation until you see the black box appear. The question and answer tool has 2 comment bubbles on it. When your question has been answered aloud, you will receive a notification of such. If you are participating by phone only or unable to type in the question and answer tool, we ask that you raise your hand. If you're on the phone and would like to raise your hand, please enter *9. If you are on the computer, you will find the hand raise in the same black toolbox. As a reminder, we will answer the typed questions first and then move to those verbal questions. If you are asking a verbal question, please make sure to limit your question to no longer than 2 minutes. As a reminder, this session is for questions to be answered, not comments. Instead, to have a response to your comment, please make sure to email us at info@i95easternct.com or complete a comment form on the study website. It's on your screen, i95easternct.com. Again, if you're having technical difficulty, and we hope you're not, please feel free to call or text Carl at 860-380-0190. As we get started, I'd like to first open the floor to any elected officials that we have here today. If you would raise your hand, and then our team can unmute you one at a time in the order in which your name appears. And I'll give you just a second. I do see that we do currently have one hand raised, and I know it's been raised for quite a while. So if you'll just give me 1 second, I can unmute you, Mr. Hoey. Now, if you can unmute yourself, you should be able to.
Thank you very much, Amy. I appreciate the opportunity to participate in this. I was hoping to do it at noontime today, but that didn't work out. I'm thrilled to see that this study is underway. I've been a resident of the Guilford of the Shoreline. I grew up in Old Saybrook, but been basically a resident of the Shoreline for 66 years, which encompasses my pretty much most of my life. One of the things that has been of concern to myself, as well as the first selectwoman in Madison, Peggy Lyons, relates to safety improvements on exit and entrance ramps and the impact that certain restrictions have. Does this study include the consideration of exit and entrance ramps, like, I apologize for the dog barking in the background, exit 60 in Madison, and I believe it is exit 53 in Branford, where there are only they're basically half exits. Does this study contemplate changes to that kind of arrangement?
Thank you so much. We appreciate you participating and completely understand that things happen. So we're glad you were able to get here for the 6 o'clock. I'm going to turn this one over to the project team here to see if someone would like to answer.
This is Gary.
One.
I can take that. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Hoey, for your questions and comments. We appreciate your input. To answer your question, it is, yes, we will be looking at those kind of improvements where there are deficient ramps currently, whether it be, weaving problems or short deceleration lanes or short. As you saw in the presentation, there's some areas where the curves are inadequate, or there's not enough length to get to the ramp termini. So yes, those will all be part of the study. Thank you.
Gary, thank you very much for that. The consideration, particularly from the Guilford's perspective, is largely the fact that we are funneling a lot of I-95 traffic from western Madison onto feeder routes in through our community, one of which passes by an elementary school, and the other delivers, and they both deliver traffic into exit 59 in Guilford, which I'm not sure which traffic engineering student designed it, but there are literally 2 lights within about 50 or 60 feet of each other. And there's a significant amount of data that suggests that traffic accidents in that area are much higher than at most of the exit and entrance ramps on 95. So whatever, again, I don't want to belabor the point, but whatever can be done to address the outlying relationship to communities relative to the lack of full exit and entrance ramps on 95 would be helpful. And thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Appreciate that. At this time, I don't see any other hands raised from elected officials, so let's move on and get started answering your questions. The first one here is, will the PEL study recommend one final project? Is that where we're headed? And Gary, I'm going to kick off with you again.
Sure, thank you. No, the intent of the PEL study is to identify and screen a broad range of reasonable alternatives that can be carried forward into the PEL phase. In all likelihood, several breakout projects will move forward for further study. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Appreciate that. While we're talking to you, I have another question I'd like to bring up and put you on deck for. Is there any potential outcome where the highway layout is not expanded for new lanes? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. We are in the early stages, as you mentioned earlier and throughout the study. So we're currently seeking your input, all you folks that are on the call today. We're seeking your input on all possible recommendations within the corridor. So we're looking for you to tell us what your experience is in your use of the corridor in the comment form. All options are being considered, including transportation system management options. So we don't have anything on the table yet, but we are certainly investigating all options.
Mike,
Thank you.
how are you? I'm so sorry I didn't get back to you sooner. This is one of those days for me. And I'm actually on the I-95 PEL.
I apologize there. Thank you, Gary. Appreciate that. Let's move along to the next question. This is very similar. It's talking about capacity improvements and expansion. And so the question is there any version of this plan where expansion or capacity improvements are in the form of a bus rapid transit facility? David, would you mind answering this one for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So really any alternative right now is on the table. So we're going to look at all the alternatives that kind of get back to the purpose of the study, trying to reduce congestion, improve safety, include technology, and include a look about trends for the future, including growth. Back to one of the other questions, there is anticipated growth along the corridor. So at this point, no alternative is off the table. It's definitely going to be a multimodal approach. I will say that there is a complementary study going on for the same area of the state, almost the entire southeast corner. It's called the Eastern Connecticut Rail and Bus Study, and we're looking at the ability to expand the Shoreline East service to accommodate today's needs as well as future growth in terms of commuting. And that study also includes a very comprehensive look at the existing fixed route bus service as well as paratransit service. The two studies are working collaboratively. They're both being managed by my office. And together, this study is really starting off with the purpose of looking at the highway system and what it can achieve and if it can be more effective. And then we also have the complementary rail and bus study. So there's really a lot of attention being focused on the southeast area of the state, and the two studies are working with each other. So yeah, transit options are definitely part of the consideration.
Thanks, David. I think that's a really great point in terms of discussing how these projects are working together. We do have some information about that study on our study website as well, and we'll try to get that link popped into the chat box in the next little bit. But speaking about collaboration and interaction, our next question has to do with just that. The question is, does the study interact or work with the Route 32 corridor study at all? And if so, what ways? Craig, I'm going to call on you for this one.
Okay. Yeah, the Route 32 study we're aware of, and actually it's being administered with DOT staff. So, we are aware of it. We are working together to coordinate any outcomes. We're aware there's, a kind of confusing ramp system in that area. And that is actually, part of kind of being looked at in both studies. So there's definitely coordination going on there.
Well, it sounds like to me, and I know we heard this in the presentation, that coordination and collaboration are the name of the game when we're talking about PEL studies. Appreciate your time there, Craig. The next question is related to safety and accidents. So I'll send this one to Gary, you or Becca. What percentage of accidents are actually due to driver error versus road structural issues? Can one of you speak to that?
Becca, you mind taking that one? You're the data expert here. Yeah, I can jump in too. If you just
Perfect.
want to start out.
Yeah, I'll start out, Gary, and if you want to add to it, go right ahead.
Sure.
So in our crash analysis and the safety analysis, we did look at the most common types of crashes that occur on this corridor, and 42% of the crashes are rear end. Typically, rear end type crashes are attributed to congestion, and then 31% are fixed object crashes. And along this corridor, where we know there's narrow shoulders, we would attribute those fixed object crashes to those narrow shoulders. So, you know, about three quarters of the crashes are, you know, rear end and fixed objects, which are due to congestion and the narrow shoulders.
Thanks, Becca. That was a very helpful explanation for those of us who are not traffic engineers. Gary, just to make sure you didn't have anything to add before we move along to the other questions.
No, I think Becca said it well. Thank you.
All right, appreciate that. So let's talk a little bit more about some of these specific areas. The next question we have here is, do you have any specific plans for the Waterford to Old Lyme segment of the corridor today? Marissa, can I call on you for this one, please?
Sure thing. So at our present time, we have no specific plans that have been identified, but that's because we are at the very beginning of this PEL study process. But what I would say is that if you would like to share your specific experiences with this information or with that section, that's the exact sort of information that we'd love to get from people. So I would encourage you to either leave a comment on the website, or actually the survey that is available as well actually does allow you to flag specific areas and leave feedback like that. So thank you for your comment.
Appreciate that, Marissa, and you are right on time with plugging the comments. Again, you'll see in the chat box we've included those links for you as well. I know that a lot of these questions being answered are probably giving you some ideas and thoughts and concerns you hadn't thought of before, and that's why this kind of environment is really great, right? So we encourage you to please send us your thoughts and concerns. So moving on to the next question. Here's a good one. It's about funding. That's always a great topic. So is there any state or federal funding that is already allocated for this study? And Marissa, would you mind answering this one as well?
Sure thing. So we are funding the study through a combination of funding sources, but any of the projects that might come out of this, again, because we are in such an early stage, haven't yet been identified. When those projects are identified, or as the study moves forward, that's when we would be looking to match up the available funding sources with the specifics of those particular projects.
Thanks, Marissa. I think you guys will hear another theme that we're saying a lot today is that we are in these very early stages. And I know sometimes that can feel frustrating, but it's an opportunity that we can hear from you as well. So let's see what the next question is. And please keep them coming. Keep these guys on their toes. So what efforts are being made to reduce traffic on the highway to help reduce the possible cost of improvements, such as encouraging employers to have employees work remotely or expand train or bus services? So for this question, David, was this one that you might be able to chime in, and then Gary can hop in afterwards?
Yeah, I just sort of want to go back up and make sure that I answer it, and it sort of provides more information than what I already said about bus services. So we're going to look at bus services along the entire corridor as an option. So it would be something like, and and I'm saying this in addition to what the Eastern Connecticut Rail and Bus Study is doing in great detail, this one would be looking at bus service and transit options in terms of those movements along the I-95 corridor. The other study, the Eastern Connecticut Rail and Bus Study, is going to look at all of those movements that happen outside of the corridor. But again, we would consider anything that would allow people to move along the corridor. So whether that's connections to what we call the main line being I-95, or connections from I-95. But the more in-depth look at the existing transit services is going to be done by the other study, the Eastern Connecticut Rail and Bus Study. I hope that answers the question.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, I think so. I hear you loud and clear. We're going to be looking at some other options there. Let's see. The next question is about widening. So is widening the highway to at least 3 lanes in each side the main objective here? So Gary, can you expand on this a little bit more? You're on mute, Gary.
My apologies. Can you repeat that question? I'm
Yeah.
not seeing that one.
Sure. So this one is about widening. And so the question is widening the highway to at least 3 lanes in each side the main objective of this overall study?
Oh, thank you for the clarification. Like we've been saying and all along here tonight, we are still in our initial findings within the corridor, and we're looking forward to hearing from you about the types of solutions you would like to see in the corridor. No concepts have been identified at this time. A range of concepts will be developed following the purpose and need approval and presented at the second public meeting next summer. Anyone else want to add to that?
Hey, Gary, I'll add a little more to that. So, we definitely understand that there are limitations to the right-of-way expansion in portions of this corridor. And so one of the things that the PEL process will allow us to do is to consider other strategies that don't include widening, that things like lane reconfiguration, high occupancy vehicles, lanes, interchange modifications, ramp metering, as well as things like part-time shoulder use. We also are looking at opportunities of other types of strategies related to intelligent transportation systems. One of the things that department is really focused on right now is thinking about the future and what's coming. And so making sure that any of the concepts and alternatives that we will be looking at, to meet the purpose and need will include things like traffic incident management, road weather management, traveler information, having access to, as you're driving the corridor, being able to make decisions because something's coming up ahead. Also work zone management, variable speed limits, but most importantly, knowing that future vehicle technology is coming and making sure that any of the concepts or alternatives can incorporate the accommodation of electric, autonomous, and connected vehicles.
Thanks, Krista. It's like the next question is, I think, very related, very topically relevant. So the next question is, how will the study include the electrification of vehicles? Kim, I think you're on deck for this one.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's a great question. While this study isn't focused on electric vehicles, we do have a separate plan that has looked at that, and as part of the new National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program, the DOT actually completed a plan this year for year 1 and submitted it, and that was approved by FHWA in September. We have a great website where you can check out our NEVI plan. The first year of the NEVI plan will indeed focus on our alternative fuel corridors that have been identified in the state, of which I-95 is one of them. So if anyone has input where you'd like to see chargers, we're certainly always open to feedback on that. But there is plenty of information on our website. I believe we can put that in the chat for everyone. And we're always looking forward to hearing your feedback on this study and on that one as well.
Thanks, Kim. Very exciting topic to hear about, and great to hear that you all are being very forward thinking in your planning. That's wonderful. So let me see. This next question here is also about safety. For safety reasons, I'm concerned about exit entrance ramps being too close together. In East Lyme, exits 71 and 72 are very close together. This results in people attempting to exit via 72 while people are simultaneously entering on 72. It creates a crisscross traffic pattern that creates a very large number of accidents. So Marissa, can you provide an answer for us?
Absolutely. So just to note, so those crisscrosses, we call those weaving segments. And as part of the information and data gathering that has been done so far, that does include looking at all of the acceleration and deceleration lanes for all of the interchanges, including those weaving segments. And this is certainly, and that, that information gathering definitely includes interchange 71 and 72 because they are quite closely spaced. So those deficiencies that are noted in our study, as well as the feedback we receive like this, will help guide our next steps. So thank you for making that comment. Certainly.
Thanks, Marissa. Appreciate it. Keep those questions coming. I see we have quite a number still in the queue, but would welcome those. And as a reminder, make sure that you have any comments, send them along to us in our study email or our study website, and check out that survey. The next question requires a little history, I think, perhaps. Is there any piece of the study that will work to resolve original problems caused by urban renewal? For example, the slicing off of the Hodges Square neighborhood / Riverside Park in New London. Kim, would you provide an answer for us?
Yeah, that's certainly some great input, giving us a really specific area there to look at. I mean, certainly, I think we all have recognized that a lot of communities and neighborhoods were certainly divided when our interstate highways were originally put in back in the 50s. And we are a different DOT. We are here to listen, and that's certainly a neighborhood that we could look at. We'd be interested in hearing your input on what's needed there. And would also, draw your attention and the community's attention. There are some grant programs that are also out as part of IJA now as well for reconnecting communities, and it's certainly a focus of US DOT in general. So specific input like that is wonderful. It allows our team to zero in and look at areas to see if there is something that can be done. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Kim. I think our next question might be really well suited for you too, if you want to keep your camera on. The question is, what is being done to make sure no one who lives next to the highway has to lose their homes as a result of highway expansion?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Certainly a very sensitive one, one that all of us take very seriously. We would look at any property takes as we're assessing impacts, as we look at concepts. We always have a preference to look and see what we can achieve within our existing right-of-way. So, as far as assurances, as we look at concepts, we would be looking at property impacts. Even sliver takes and partial takes are considered when we look at impacts as well. So that would be looked at very carefully.
Appreciate that, Kim. So let's talk a little bit more about technology. What is the role that technology is playing in the study? For example, consideration of self-driving and connected vehicles, any other new technologies that will be considered in the study? Krista, do you want to start us off here?
Sure. So I think really part of the PEL process, like I mentioned before, we will look at all potential concepts and strategies to address future technologies. And as far as what the department is doing, the Connecticut DOT is keeping an eye on the emerging technologies. They're working on the NEVI plan, as Kim mentioned. How do we be mindful of upcoming electric vehicles as well as alternative fuel corridors. So as far as the role in the PEL process, all of the concepts will consider the need for that future component potentially on the corridor, but we're not in the design phase. The actual development of the design of the potential projects will be happening as we move forward through the NEPA phase and then the rest of the project delivery process.
Thank you, Krista. Appreciate that. All right, this next question is a little more specific. Is there a priority on adding additional northbound and southbound exits and entrances to interchanges that were limited during the times of the tolls? So specifically, citing exit 53 in Branford, it has been an issue for a number of years. Dave, can you provide some insight on that one?
Yes, so exit 53 in Branford is part of the study area, so we will be looking at that area, but we're going to look at it in the context of operational deficiencies. So if those missing movements create a problem operationally, then yeah, we are going to consider how adding those missing movements or reconfiguring what exists today could improve the corridor. So we will include it, and that's regardless for the original reason for the missing movement. So just, there are no toll scenarios or alternatives being considered as part of this study. So, but operationally, yes, we will look at those missing movements.
Thanks, Dave. Some good points that you just made there. Also, a little more in specific too, this person lives in Branford near exit 54, and the question is related to the sound barriers. So it says the sound barriers between Cherry Street and O'Brien were never completed with the Q Bridge project. It's about 100 to 150 yards of barrier. Would the sound barrier on the southbound side between these streets be completed before you start construction, since noise goes way up during high traffic times? Kim, would you mind providing an answer for this one?
Again, another very specific one. It's great to have a specific area to focus in on. Noise has certainly been, we've heard a lot from the public regarding noise ever since the pandemic, with more folks at home trying to work from home. We certainly have heard a lot more from all of our residents, and also, with increases in truck traffic as well, have kind of exacerbated that. So as far as where sound barriers would go, this is again another part of what the study would look at as we look at different concepts that we're considering. So certain concepts that add lanes or could increase noise would certainly include a noise study, and that would be completed in the NEPA phase. But it's something that we can also take a very high look at during the PEL, as far as looking at neighborhoods in general that are close to the interstate highway. So certainly something that will be taken into account, and we'll be sure to keep a special eye on that area. Thank you for that very specific input. It's very helpful.
Thank you. And I would just encourage, if you also haven't given that very specific input as a comment, that is the type of stuff that is very helpful for this team. So the next question has to do with wrong way access. And so what options and interchanges are going to be considered to reduce this wrong way access onto the highway? Kim, I'm going to call on you again, if that's all right.
Absolutely. I love the tough ones. This one's definitely near and dear to my concerns with our highway safety office of being within our bureau. We have, unfortunately, during the pandemic and beyond, seen just a incredibly horrible and frightening increase in our fatalities, in our crashes, and most recently in our wrongly driving incidents. So we're taking a close look at this in as many areas of the department as we can. We do have a pilot program that is going on in certain areas across the state. You might have seen some of those in the news, where we're actually installing some new warning systems and signals with new flashing lights at some of our really high incident areas where we think that things are going wrong and people are getting confused getting onto the highway. But that is certainly something that also at a larger scale can be incorporated into this PEL, where if we see improvements that can be made to make those entrance ramps safer, we will certainly do that. But welcome you to check out. I think we've had some news press releases on that, and really great to see some of the work that's going on to try to abate this situation, a very serious one. So thank you for bringing that to our attention on this stretch.
Yeah, I know safety is definitely one of the study goals here. So I know we like to hear about where those potential safety concerns are here. So the next question has to do with priorities, and we all know priorities are important, but is there a priority area? I think they mean geographically, such as the stretch between Saybrook and the Groton Bridge, for instance. So Gary or Krista, can I call on one of you to answer this?
Sure, I can start out. Thank you. The PEL study does not preclude the department from undertaking other projects within this corridor, particularly as needed to maintain a state of good repair. Other than that, we do not have any like priority to areas. We don't have any ranking system as of yet. That's where we're looking for your input. So please keep making comments. Use that interactive map to show us where you are having problems. Krista, do you want to jump in, or do you have anything to add to that one?
Yeah, you were right on the money. Don't forget that we have the MetroQuest survey that is up and running, and one of those questions is a mapping question where you can go in and put a pin on where you're seeing or experiencing a particular problem or issue. And for that specific area, please go in and put a note of what your issues are for there. But as Gary mentioned, as part of a priority area, we are doing a high level PEL study right now for the full 59-mile corridor. But as we develop the concepts and move into reasonable alternatives, we will be breaking out the project recommendations, in smaller pieces. And then the department will figure out funding and prioritize which projects that they can move forward. And I know Gary mentioned it previously, but also there's opportunity to do early action projects that don't necessarily require federal approval, that doesn't need to go into an environmental assessment or environmental impact statement, to help address some of those design deficiencies that they can take on fairly quickly. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you, Gary and Krista. Appreciate that. So our next question is talking about, what are the solutions on the table, right? And it's asking, is one of the solutions perhaps putting up more signs, warning drivers ahead of time of a possible problem at the exit? So Kim, can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, I can try to. I'm wondering in which direction this question is going, so I'll try to answer both of them. We are trying to take a look at where we think folks are getting on the wrong way on the interstates. However, we don't always have that information, right? So we are trying to take a look at also what's leading to these crashes. Honestly, right now, I will share that what we are seeing is that a lot of the folks that are getting into these crashes are impaired. So we're working on some messaging and some media messaging with that. As far as if you're referring to our variable message signs, some states, do have a warning system where they can warn of a wrong way driver. We're not quite there yet with our technology, but we are certainly looking at all the improvements that we can make to get there. But certainly appreciate if there's a particular exit on ramp and off ramp that are close together that you see as a problem. That would be wonderful if you can bring that to our attention and point it out.
Thanks, Kim. It looks like we're at our last written question. So as promised, we want to turn it over the floor to anyone who is not able to type in their question. For whatever reason, if you wouldn't mind raising your hand, or if you're on the phone, I don't see anyone just on the phone, but if so, you can hit *9 to raise your hand and we will unmute you so you can ask your question at this time. And while we give that a little bit of a break, I am going to change the screen up here If you haven't followed us on Facebook, we would encourage you to meet us there. There's definitely a conversation going on, that's for sure. And you can sign up for alerts on our study website there. So just pausing, I never want to give people plenty of time if we are doing that. Checking around here, and I don't see any additional questions or hands raised. Let's give it another 20, 30 seconds just to make sure we don't want to shut things down too soon. Okay, so I know we have mentioned quite a bit about the survey. We're going to have the survey that everyone has mentioned. It's through MetroQuest, where you can put your concerns specifically in geographic areas. We're going to put a link to that in the chat window for you. If you don't catch it, it is right on our study website. If you go to this page that you see here and go to our virtual meeting page, you can find all of the materials that we have gone over today. You can find them in detail there, but also the link to that survey. I would just caution that this is a 59-mile corridor, and so while that survey is optimized for mobile, it's a really long corridor to be in a mobile setting. So if you have access to a desktop computer, I would suggest that your experience may be a little better there, or a little easier to find exactly where you might put some of those comments there. And again, that survey is going to remain open just like our comment period through the end of this month, November 30th. And I do just want to have a couple of reminders here. I'm getting some notes from the team to provide some reminders. So if you'll just give me a little patience here as it's coming through. There are some construction projects that will be undertaken in this corridor beginning in 2023. This has to do with Interchange 74 reconstruction, some pavement rehab on both the north and southbound lanes. And between, I'll say 89 and the Rhode Island state line.
Amy,
So,
maybe
yeah,
have Brett just give a little more information of that.
yeah,
Brett, can you
please.
just take that real quick?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. My name is Brett Stark, and I work in the chief engineer's office. Yeah, just again to remind folks that this study is being undertaken. If you heard a lot of conversation here about things that are being evaluated, but just there are planned projects, construction projects that will be underway. As Amy mentioned, too, that we can specifically note are the Interchange 74 and pavement rehab projects on 95 northbound and southbound in the eastern part of the corridor there. This is work that, as was mentioned earlier, is necessary to keep the infrastructure in a state of good repair. And so, just want to make sure that people are aware of that. And before it comes up and says, oh, hey, I attended this meeting and they're already out there doing this work, but there are some planned work that's out there. Again, this study will be building off that work that's already planned and understood as the team moves forward here. So just wanted to highlight that for everyone.
Thanks, Brett. That is a very good point. Please don't see those orange cones and get concerned that we're already moving to construction on this. That's a great time for us to remind you all that, we're taking your comment today. Maybe you ask a question, maybe you thought of one later. Just please make sure to connect with us online if you haven't already. I know we mentioned our Facebook page and signing up. We would love to get your comment there. All of our written comments will get some responses. It looks like
There's one more question.
Is there one more question?
Yeah,
Okay.
I can handle that
Got
one.
it?
The
All
question is, can anyone at DOT explain why highway entrances and exits were renumbered? I'll start out and maybe Marissa can jump in. Basically, the exits were renumbered based on mileage. Now they're just based on sequential. Number 1 starts in Greenwich and 92 ends in Stonington. Obviously, those are not based on. So what Connecticut's doing is from the New York state line basically would be mile 0. to Rhode Island, whatever that mileage is, those exits are now going to be labeled based on the mileage within the state or the beginning of the route. That's how that is determined. I don't know if Marissa, you want to add to that?
Sure thing. So it's my understanding that part of these sign replacement projects are coming up as the signs throughout any one particular corridor are nearing the end of their useful life. So they're getting ready to be replaced anyways. So that's sort of the trigger that's causing these projects to take that look and to actually do the re-signing themselves itself, or the renumbering itself. And to Gary's point, yes. So if you are getting off, in the future, if you're getting off at, exit 62, you know that you're at mile point 62. If you're getting on at mile point 15, that would be exit 15, and you're getting off at mile point 30, you know that you have 30 miles to travel. So it's a little bit more intuitive, once everybody gets used to it, for how long it might actually be, you might actually be on the system, or how many miles you have to travel.
All right. Thank you, guys. I'm just gonna pause just a second before we close out and make sure we don't have any other questions here. I'm not trying to hurry anybody out. We appreciate everyone who has spent their evening with us tonight, share their thoughts, has given us a lot of things to think about ourselves. I know Krista and the study team can't wait to dive into your comments and just see how we can incorporate that. All right. So I do think we do have a just a follow-on question. I don't know if anyone wants to chime in on this. Can you speak to like the benefit of this new numbering system? I think there are some concerns that maybe people think that they've missed an exit when it's just the mileage. And I think, Marissa, you were just getting to some of the benefit there in your answer when you were talking about understanding the distance from one place to another.
Sure. It's my understanding for those projects that are going out, they are including the old exit, X, whatever the old exit might be in the short term, to help people with that adjustment period. I think, I do believe that it is a federal mandate for the part of our roadway system that this changeover does happen. But ultimately, yes, I do believe it is just, the idea of the exit being, associated with where you are within the state or within that particular route.
Sure. Kim, do you have anything to add to this?
I certainly can try. I'm not the traffic expert by any means, but certainly this has been a federal mandate, and there are some other reasons behind it as far as ease of emergency response. And this is being done nationwide. So we are trying to ease the pain of that change for everyone by having transition period with the signs. You'll notice that it'll have the old exit number and the new exit number. So we ask for your patience as we go through that change. And hopefully it'll become habit soon enough. But there are some good reasons behind it. We do understand that it is difficult and a little bit of a change for everyone, but there are some good safety reasons behind it.
Thanks, Kim. I think you had plenty to add. Those are some really great points too, and I appreciate you, Marissa, coming back on. Let's just, it looks like we are through all of the questions now. I say that, we'll see what happens.
Well, I'll just add it. If
ahead,
there is one, we'll jump back. I just, on behalf of the DOT, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us this evening and for asking some very pertinent questions. And we are going to do our best to answer these, and keep following us and keep making your comments. We appreciate and encourage them. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. If I could just make one last plug, I know at the beginning of this meeting, we talked about the optional demographics and feedback survey about today's meeting. We're going to put that link also back in the chat. please let us know how we did today. If you complete that, it will help us just offer a better opportunity the next time. We really appreciate your time here. And with that, we're going to close the meeting this evening. Thank you.